Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Sachin McDonnell. Coach McDonnell is the owner of Maximum Sports Conditioning in Bellevue, Washington, as well as Paladin Health and Human Performance, Coach McDonnell's online training platform. McDonnell trains all ages and levels of athletes from 6 to 76, but focuses on a clientele between 8 and 18. His current interests lie in TPV concepts taught by Rolf Ohman and Randy Huntington. McDonnell applies these ideas in a conjugate-style training system. He also takes special interest in the psychology of coaching through buy-in and trust. As an introvert himself, these ideas have helped his coaching career as much as the science. Coach McDonnell has an exercise science degree from Seattle Pacific University, as well as a CSCS on top of countless other certifications. Through all of these experiences, he'll be working towards publishing a book and a training course to help others learn from and avoid the mistakes he's made in his career. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
We've known each other quite a while, and we're finally getting set down to do this, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, me too, man. Ever since our call the other day, I was like, okay, this is going to be a good one.
I sure hope so, and that call brought on a lot of questions I have and stuff that I'm just starting to see the benefits of. But just like in the bio, you mentioned TPV in there. So explain TPV and what you're looking for.
Yeah, so time to peak velocity. So about 2.5-ish years ago, we had what we called our PMAV seminar. And one of the coaches was Rolf Ohman. Now, Rolf Ohman and Randy Huntington, obviously they're Olympic level sprint coaches. And he brought this concept that he called the holy grail of metrics, which is the TPV. So the TPV is time to peak velocity. And for his system, he matches it to ground contact times. So your ability to be able to generate force and get to your peak velocity quicker than your opponents is what gets you faster, jump higher, and stuff like that. And so how we've applied it essentially is we use the OVR just because it's super simple to use. It's a tether system, which I actually like better at this point. And, you know, we've been seeing how different athletes look as far as TPV, because we've had athletes who are super strong and, you know, pretty powerful. But if you look at TPVs as far as like their stopping step up, they might be slower than you expect because the TPV isn't great. While other athletes, they're not as strong, but the TPVs are really good at certain loads. And then you can see why they're really fast. So ever since learning that and just kind of delving into it more and honestly bugging Rolf every day about how to really understand the metrics, it's really helped me just kind of wrap my head around how to use it.
Now, when you're measuring that, do you use the OVR VBT box and then you tether it to a belt, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's on the bar and then it's like weighed down by like a 10-pound plate, and then it's used like a tendo, right? And so we just do it like that. And then we usually do warm-up sets. So I have a guy, he's going into college as a running back, and he's essentially living on that thing because he has his school practices already. And then essentially all we have room for is the TPV stuff, plus some sprints because he's really trying to get really fast. And that thing just shows why his speed is elite.
Now, I've kind of toyed around with my OVR VBT, and I hooked it to a belt, and I had kids jumping to see, you know, time to peak through that. And
yeah,
it really enlightens you as to what's going on.
No, it really does. It really does. It you know, being a West Side guy, you know, we always did dynamic effort work. And obviously that has a correlation with how athletic someone is, but the TPV is just another level where it's like, oh, this is like that special thing that people have if they're super athletic.
So Ralph Ohman was on Burn the Ladders with Fahey a while back. I listened to that. So I got a good indication of kind of what he was talking about. And it seems like he got there, I'll paraphrase so it doesn't take forever, but we kind of got there the same way, in a weird sort of way. You take whatever event or whatever you're trying to do, and you look at your time to peak for that. And then you try to match that up with the lift is originally what he was trying to do. And he found out he couldn't do it. He was doing it. He was trying it with cleans. He couldn't get there. He was trying it with high pulls. He couldn't get there. So then he kind of ended up somewhere around the jumps and the fast eccentrics. Is that kind of what you're looking at to improve your TPV, or how are you going about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of both ways to go about it. So the talented kids, just like everything, they'll respond faster. We use it for our partial range of motion squats as well as stomping step ups. And so it's just another way to load it up. So the way Rolf does it is he'll put it on a bar and you'll do like a 1/4 depth box squat or a half depth box squat. And the idea is just to get, you might have a good peak velocity, but for him, if it's not within a certain time frame, it's not transferable. So as far as how we apply it, we kind of look at it, and this is ever changing. So in 3 months, this might be different. But as far as now, it's, you work your TPV in the weight room, and then your peak velocity stuff is on the court, on the field. We have turf. And so that's where you're able to get those maximal peak velocities. And so, when you look at some athletes, they have really good verticals, but they have to squat all the way down. And those are people who aren't as good at TPV stuff because it takes them a while to develop their power. And then you look at the other kids who can just, they accelerate super quick and they might not even really jump as high, but that's just a horsepower issue. That's just, let's just get them strong. So that's how we kind of look at it as far as the training.
Now, will that help you identify your strength athletes from your twitchy athletes?
Yeah, exactly. So the people who have good, essentially fast twitch muscle fibers, they probably have stiffer, tighten. They probably have a more efficient nervous system. Those are the kids who don't need a ton of time. They're just able to turn everything on right away. While the kids who, like one of the things I'm explaining to one of our interns now is something I heard, I want to say from another podcast. I forgot which one, it was years ago, but some kids need to be strong to be fast, and some kids need to be fast to be strong. The strong to be fast kids are usually kids who need a little bit more time. They're more like power oriented people. While the people who need to have speed to be strong, those are those twitchy kids who are just able to turn everything on and just really need to get stronger. And then they just do amazing things.
And this is why I was excited to do this podcast. The different athletes I get, the more I'm starting to notice how big of an impact that makes and how you have to prepare those kids differently from each other because they're not the same. You get down that Paladin rabbit hole really fast, and obviously he understood it. That's why he had so many Olympians.
Right, exactly. No, it's definitely, I'll be honest, we try to keep everyone in the system as long as we can because we deal with a lot of developmental athletes. But once they're at a certain point, you have to keep their strengths up and try to develop those weaknesses. Like, some people will be like, hey, if you bring the weak link up, then they'll be a lot better. And that's true. But if you did it at the expense of what their natural strength is, then you're just average at everything. So you got to be able to keep both in.
That's when I was starting to figure it out this season. Actually, I don't have enough data, but it started dawning on me. We have a strength kid.
Yeah.
We were trying to get him ready for a conference, so we had him throwing a light shot, thinking, hey, if we get you faster here, it'll help carry over. Well, it didn't. And then now you're scratching your head like, why didn't that? Because that's where you're weak. Why didn't that carry over where he needed heavy shots?
Yeah.
To create that. And so now you're scratching your head like, I don't know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I've had that thought many times over the years. I mean, we have a joke with one of the other coaches, and whenever we question something, we're just like, it's all made up. I don't know what's going on here. I used to think I knew stuff, but now it's like, I'm not so sure anymore.
Well, we can take this a little further into a conjugate style with the TPV. So you start adding accommodating resistance. This is another one that hit me too, is I thought I would hold the bands back to the end and that would give them the biggest boost.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids it did. Some kids chains hit harder and chains were better. I think the twitchier your kid is, you really have to be careful with those bands or you'll hit that CNS wrong. Have you noticed anything like that, or am I out on an island?
No, I definitely think that. I mean, you talked about Paladin, and one of his disciples is Christian Thibodeau, and he would talk about how the twitchy kids have, especially the super explosive ones, their nervous systems are just so sensitive. So when you put in a lot of really powerful things like bands for them, while it might be good for, someone slow like me who might need that type of stimulus. No, the twitchy kids, they might get smoked by it.
And you know, it doesn't matter until it matters, right?
Yeah,
When you're getting
that's
some kids to really go do some stuff that you didn't ever see yourself coaching towards, that's when
yep.
all them that information becomes really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's you know, most kids fall into 80%, right? They're probably not going to be world class, and they're probably, but they're not like they don't suck as an athlete. And so the understanding of the edges with the 10% who aren't very athletic and you can turn them athletic, and then the kids who are already athletic, and how do you push them in a way that can keep moving them forward? Those are definitely when it's like, oh, this is when I know I'm doing something good, because the middle 80% is the easy part. That's get them strong and get them fast. After that, it's like, when people aren't going in the direction I think they should, now I've got to delve even deeper.
Now, what are you finding increases TPV? Are you overspeeding the eccentrics? Are you using jumps? What are you doing? Are you increasing ground contact time? There has to be something that moves the dial a little better than something else.
Yeah, I mean, ground contact times definitely help because they do kind of correlate with TPV. But if I'm to be completely honest, the way I have it currently set up is a bit of a conjugate style, because there is like a heavy TPV day and like a lighter TPV day. So the running back I was talking about. So we have a day where we'll do two sets of four as far as like his TPV stuff. And another day is just one set of eight, because if you look at what Rolf talks about with the winding filament theory, it takes like, 4 to 6 up to 8 reps to really get that tight and really moving. And then you start accelerating even more. So been doing conjugate stuff for over 20 years, and it's hard for me, to not have that philosophy in my program. So that's where that kind of came from, because if you just do the kind of lighter stuff where it's just bouncy, like we talked about earlier, they're losing some force production because the mass isn't there. So having both sides in a quote unquote max effort and dynamic effort type system definitely helps with maximizing speed and jumping.
Now, will you waive that? Will you come up to the strength curve on your TPV day? Will you start at a certain meter per second, let's say zero point 0.6, and then move that up the dial to almost peak and then start over? Or how does that look?
No, so usually what I do is I look at what's called their EA index. So it's their peak velocity divided by their time to peak velocity. If that's going up, then I know we're heading somewhere good, because in the weight room, TPV for me is the main thing to look at. And so if their peak velocity isn't great, but their time to peak velocity is getting faster. If you look at the equation, that's going to bring their EA index way higher. So TPV is really that thing that makes the athleticism go up. Now you will see that the more athletic kids will have a higher PV. So that's definitely a part of it. So as far as programming that in, it's honestly so far just been simple for me as far as, did you hit the required things I wanted? Yeah. Okay. Let's add 5 pounds. So just basic progressive overload with it has been unbelievably good for it. And one of the things that Rolf told me a lot is, make sure you're not using exercises too early. And what he meant by that is there's some people using over speed eccentrics, and the athlete doesn't have the structure to handle it, because that's super powerful on your body, right? So he said, make sure they're able to handle this stuff first in what he would call an LTAD model. And then after that, then they can start implementing more overspeed eccentrics and stuff like that. So that's how we've been kind of doing it as far as programming. We just keep it with straight weight. And if it comes to a point where they do need the extra velocity, because that eccentric velocity is what activates that winding filament, that's when we'll put that in. But I'm trying to stay away from it as long as I can. But with the results we're getting, I'm like, okay, we're getting some good results. So we might have to put those in sooner rather than later.
That's something I'm just starting to toy around with and see what moves the dial more than others. I've seen good luck with chains on some of my more experienced kids and getting that to move up. But like you said, some of those kids can't handle that yet, and they're already shaky on the eccentric. So if you do anything to make that faster, now they're even more shaky.
Yeah, exactly. And we want to avoid that. I mean, not like you're implying, safety first. Safety is the number one thing for any program. So once they have a certain level of strength, then we can start implementing like fast eccentrics. But until then, a lot of the stuff that we've been doing the past 20, 30 years is really, really good.
Now, on top of the things you're working with there, you've added a shred mill to your gym. I've seen some stuff that you've posted on Instagram using that. How has that changed how you view sprinting, and how is that helping your sprinters?
Yeah, no, that helps a ton. So for those who don't know, it works on the magnetic resistance, and the more magnets you have against the machine, the harder it is to run. So it's definitely helped a lot because a lot of kids kind of have this technique of stomping down and then pulling through. And it teaches this idea of slicing back because if you don't slice back, the shred mill will slow you or it will slow down too much. It's like, hey, see what happens when you slice back a little further than you think you should. And we do that. And then they get faster. And they're like, what? Because most kids want to like feel the ground, which is good, but you also need the speed that you need as far as your ground contact time. So it's been helping our tens a ton. We do some stuff that's a little longer distance when it's really when the weather is good enough. I mean, here in Seattle, it gets pretty rainy. So and we have 25 yards of turf. So we usually do just like a 10 and then a 5 yard into a 10 yard. And then when the bay doors open, we can open up for all 25 yards and run into the parking lot essentially. But no, it definitely helps. I mean, some of the times some kids are getting, it's like that's literally world class. Like I tell a lot of the interns, for a 40-yard dash run a 4.25, you need a 1.5 10, 1.0 10 to 20, point 0.9 30 20 to 30, and then 0.85 30 to 40. And if you look at our fastest times from 10 to 20, we have a lot of sub one people. Now, that's also they are talented. So I'm not going to say we can take all the credit, but I've seen more than a few gyms really mess kids up, saying they're doing stuff that works, but then the kid will come back here and then they're slower. I'm like, okay, you trained a year to get slower. They're like, yeah, I should have been here. So it's definitely, having the equipment that helps your kids get better is definitely really important.
Now, I don't have much experience with the shred mill. I saw it last year at NatCon. I've talked to Villani. I've never had a kid on it, never been on it myself. So, outside looking in, to me, it improves acceleration tremendously. You're talking about your first sets of
Yep.
numbers are what's dropping. So, is that just allowing your kids to show their top speed better, you think, because their acceleration got so much better? That's a question I'm always going to have.
I think it's more so they're able to accelerate to that top speed faster. So kind of similar to TPV, like time to peak velocity. We're working on more of an explosiveness. We're not trying to kind of feather out that acceleration because we mostly deal with team sports. So it allows them to feel that where they can accelerate into that top speed. I mean, we've heard it for decades now where, oh, it only took them 2 steps to get to top speed. Now, is that true? No, it's this not really their top speed, but they're able to explode to something way faster than their opponents. So giving them that ability has been really good. Like one of the kids we trained a couple years ago, he's playing baseball at Utah now. And his speed got crazy, and he's a strong kid. I mean, he told me in college this first year, he did a 375, reverse lunge for a triple. And he's like, I don't know, 200 pounds or something. So pretty strong. But, he came back for his last year. He came back for a little bit. And we implemented even more shred mill stuff and TPV stuff with him with the stopping step ups. And he's like, I'm even faster now than how I was during our high school season. So, no, that combination has helped us a ton.
You've talked about it a few times, and it's a question on here, so we might as well go ahead and tackle it. But
Yeah.
stomping step ups,
Yeah.
what are you doing, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so same thing as what we talked about with the TPV. So, for our stomping step ups, we essentially have a bar in your back, and we do 8-inch boxes and 4-inch boxes, and we're trying to match it to that ground contact time. So, us as conjugate guys, we're really good at making 0 to 10, right? Because if you look at ground contact times from a start, you're like at 400-ish milliseconds, and it gets all the way down within the first 7 steps to almost 100 milliseconds. So we have time to put force into the ground when we're running at those speeds. But now the stomping step ups, at the 4-inch box, that's about, where you'll be for max velocity. And so it allows people to be able to see that TBV time and get faster off the ground and put more force into the ground at certain time frames. And that's essentially what we're looking for. There's the conversation of, do you look for a short ground contact time or not? I go back and forth on that a lot myself, but just keeping TPV to ground contact times has shown a ton of transfer. So just get that knee high and stop down as hard as you can. Like I said, at running back, I keep bringing up he ran a 2.5220, which is super elite. And if you look at his times on the TPV, he's using 260 pounds, stomping step up, stomping step up with sub 100 milliseconds. So he's able to get to higher peak velocities even faster than normal people. So that's where it's like, oh, okay, this is what's really happening. Because I just for fun, I tested his 0.6 on both the straight bar and the safety squat bar. And this 0.6 meters per second isn't that great. And that really blew my mind because I know that works. I've done that with myself and a lot of other athletes. I'm like, yeah, that Bidney ratio, that holds very true. But something about this kid, due to whatever it might be, genetic elasticity or what, when he tries it, it's not great, but he's still able to put a ton of force into the ground very fast. So just having both of those into his program is actually showing a ton of dividends.
Now, I don't know if I had set it up right, but we got into this a little bit with one of my long jumpers. When you set up this stomping step up, is it somewhat unilateral? Do you have one foot on the ground and then the box, and then you stomp with one foot like an overspeed eccentric, and then you switch feet? Is that how that's set up?
Yeah. So you would so you essentially think of it like a regular step up with a barbell on your back. So you just put your foot on the box, but you raise your knee up and you're literally stomping down and exploding up as high as you can. We'll do 4 on the left and then 4 on the right. And then we'll either contrast it or just take a break. Or if you're doing the one set of 8, you're just doing 8 straight on the one foot. So yeah, it's very unilateral, and that's why it transfers to the sprint so well.
We was contrasting it with the K box. So we'd hit 10 seconds ISO, 10 seconds pushing, and then we'd go to the stomping step up is how we were doing it.
Yeah, no, that sounds like great. I mean, we had a K box, and I think we were the first one in Washington to have one way back when we first got it, but we kept breaking the strap and I got tired of buying more. So I was like, maybe I'll figure something else out. And it's the older model too. It's like the K Box 3. I should probably get a 4 here soon.
Well, mine's homemade, and I finally found good Samson spot cord that holds up really well.
Oh.
But it took a while to figure out what works. And even then, I got to keep an eye on it because we will cut it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that thing is, that's a monster of a machine.
Now, when you're measuring that, are you measuring peak velocity? And then when you set it up on the OVR, you can look at, 3 or 4 different things in your screen window. You can look at your average to peak. You can peak velocity, time to peak. What are you looking at on that?
For the stomping step up?
Yes.
So I'm looking at TPV, their peak velocity PV, and then the EA index. So there's some times where they'll have a lower peak velocity, but a lower time to peak velocity too. So the EA index is high. And then sometimes they'll have a high peak velocity, but a slow TPV. And then the EA index will be, or the EAPV, I should say, will be a little low. So it's kind of a combination of the 3. So just looking at that, how the OVR has the box part where you can pick different things. I usually go peak velocity for that big one, TPV for the bottom left one, then EA index for the bottom right. So I'm always looking at those 3 after the set is done.
How much does RSI play into that on the stomping step ups?
Yeah. So the stomping step ups are more so concentric because you're not having this huge drop. You're just kind of stomping up. It probably have more to do on the quarter and half squat, just because there is this rebound effect. But I'm sure there's some type of like correlation there. But if I'm to be honest, for that, I haven't really looked a ton at RSI since starting it. We will look at RSI when we do stuff on the plyo mat. But even then, it's more so we'll have just like a depth jump day and then a vertical jump day, and then I'm just really trying to see what your outputs look like.
With your shred mill, are you supersetting that with anything? Are you supersetting that with sled work or overspeed work? How is it just a shred mill day? How are you making that work?
Yeah, so generally speaking, our athletic development programs are 30 minutes of turf and sprints, jumps, throws, half hour of barbell work, and then a half hour of just accessories for whatever the kid needs. So usually what we were doing at first was we were doing sprints contrasted with different things, and we would run it actually on an EMOM cycle. And so we'd run a sprint, then we might do like a OHM run, and then we sprint, and then we'll do like a broad jump. And then we have a few different things we do. And then later on we would shred mill along with jumps. And that was a logistical issue, and just we just wanted to make sure they got that in though. But currently we switched out OHM for the shred mill, and it's helping with our sprints. Now it's a little tough having it be an EMOM and having to do sprint, shred mill, then sprint. But really, because of it's the second thing they do, it almost acts as an extended warm up too, and they're still able to get, you know, it almost tells them their brain, oh, I need to stomp better, I need to slice better, I should say, because if they get a bad score on there, they know why. It's because they weren't slicing and pushing as much as they should. That's a big thing that we teach as far as cues. So the kids who slice and push the best, they're our fastest. So that definitely cues them up, and it gives them that physiological benefit too. It gives them, they stay in a more acceleration type 2 to 4 step, like ground contact time, and then that's why it transfers to that first 10 so well.
Now, you talked about it earlier, and you talked about Bidney, but the 0.6 meters per second, I know that's kind of where Louis was before accommodating resistance come in. He was kind of working in that range. Is that where you got it from, or is that where you landed through testing and just seeing that you saw big benefits there?
No, I got it from Bidney. I definitely got it from him. I would love to say I came up with stuff, but all the success we have as far as our program is we are listening to people way smarter than me, and then just taking what they do. And obviously it has to work in our system. Um, but no, I mean, max effort took from Louis. TPV took from Rolf. Point 0.6 took from Bidney. Depth jumps every week. I had a conversation with Brandon Bird, and he said he did that for a while. And so, I would love to say I came up with all this, but I am definitely on the shoulders of giants. And I mean, it's like what Louis used to say, right? Like everyone would be like, "Oh, Louis, you didn't come up with this." He's like, "Yeah, well, I didn't come up with toilet paper, but I'm smart enough to use it." So our programs are definitely a lot like that, where people smarter than us come up with things. We put it together in a certain way. It's like our own recipe. But no, point 0.6 is definitely like I heard Bidney talk, and I was like, oh, he's making some really good athletes. I'm gonna try that. And then look at that. We got better. Who would have thought?
Yes, I tried other speeds to see what it would do, and he was right. I've had the most success at 0.6 as
Yeah.
opposed to some of the other speeds. Now, then again, it depends what we're trying to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we're trying to get a kid ready for something throwing wise or something like that, we may up those speeds as we get closer because we're looking at time to peak and all of that stuff.
Right.
But yes, we've had a lot of luck right there.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely been a good one. It's funny because very randomly a guy came into our gym like 2 years ago, and he starts doing dumbbell jumps and stuff. And I ask him, I'm like, dude, do you like have you heard of Jared Bidney? And he was like, yeah, I have. That's actually who wrote my program. And he's a strong guy, and he's interning with us now. His name is Joe. And Joe is like just straight up just dumbbell jump superset with the jump, and then he's doing the tendo stuff, and it's like, yeah, this guy's super athletic. This stuff definitely works. So it's cool to see it up close.
Talking about that, creating elasticity. Sometimes we think of elasticity exactly backwards to how it really is, but you're actually creating a stiffness.
Yeah.
How are you improving athletes' elasticity?
Yeah. So a lot of it, I actually got this idea from Fahey, and when we were doing a ton of belted marches, that actually helped a lot. That helped with creating stiffness as far as like the ankle complex. One of our coaches, Nate, he actually programmed for a while until the strap broke. We were actually doing seated calf on the K box, and that created a ton of stiffness in the ankle for our kids, and they were just bouncing off that floor like crazy. So that's been another way. And I mean, just, creating stiffness through just anything that stretch training cycle definitely helps. I mean, so when I talk with Rolf, and I'm gonna bring up Rolf a lot because he's been kind of my mentor for the last 2.5, 3 years. But when him and I talk, he'll talk about people will kind of emphasize the eccentric and concentric as two different things. And so when you like, if you've read, I know you've read it, but if the listeners have read triphasic training, you just picture the V and you're trying to make it so you're more of a check mark, right? And you have to have this ability to have both at the same time. So like if you have the V, you have to have those circles around the V, which are going up. So the best athletes can do both the eccentric and concentric well. And really a lot of it comes down to coordinating it up because that's what, when we think about ground contact time, your body's systems aren't coordinated, and that's what increases that amortization. So the more we can get that coordination up and have everything work at the same time, the better of an athlete you'll be. So yeah, do your heavy eccentrics, yeah, do your explosive stuff and your heavy lifting, but we also need this way of coordinating it up. So being able to do that via, the ankle complex and then having the knee stiff and then the hip be able to land, having it all strong is kind of what it comes down to. If anyone has bought my PMAV seminar, which is not for sale right now, but I'm going to put it back up for sale. Even Rolf, as a guy who says, you should never grind a weight, he still says max strength is the most important thing. So, it comes down to, you got to be strong and then you got to be fast, just like Louis said.
Going back to the K box on your 90s, so you're seated. Were you doing that physically seated or were you putting them at a 90-degree angle?
No, we're doing that physically seated. So just like a seated calf raise would be, we were sitting down on like one of our jump boxes, and then you would put I think we were doing the like straight handle that we had, and then we'd actually have to put pads on the knees of people because it would just kind of pull so hard. But yeah, we were doing just like a seated calf. And if you look at, again, Rolf and Randy, they talk about the Kaiser seated calf being like the best thing to help your soleus be able to be strong enough to handle those loads. So I do think that's kind of the next progression that we are planning to do. So don't be surprised if you see that Kaiser seated calf on our Instagram sometime soon.
Well, I had tinkered with the K box, but I had kids in a 90-degree position. I hadn't quite got it seated. And I know like Waffle Iron Jim and those guys, that's what he was trying to do with the one
Yeah.
he made. So seeing how I can move the needle there would definitely help our guys out getting ready to go into, summer camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely try that one out. That one. So who I mentioned, our coach Nate, he's like a super athletic guy. And when he put that in, it just like he was running those world-class times too. And I'm like, huh, that was a good idea, Nate. Good job. So it's been good.
Now I wonder now, because you're seeing more of this and I've heard guys talk about it a little bit, and I wonder how the carryover could be, but in the vibration boards, have you used any of that?
We haven't used that, but I will say, I mean, I'm sure you're the same. We've heard about those for a long time. Um, and I was more when I first started, I was more of like a just lift and get strong, and I think that's good. But the more I talk to Rolf, the more he kind of gives me insight on certain things, and he is a big fan of it. The problem is he feels that a lot of people just make like almost kind of knockoff versions of it to where it's not really giving the effect that he would say you should get out of it. But we have had people use stuff like that for like a warm up at other gyms, but we really haven't done a ton as far as in our gym.
I was going through the gym the other day and I was cleaning it up, and I I put this back in, which is really weird, but it's almost like the old pogo balls. If you're old enough to remember them, it was kind of
Yeah.
a ball with a board around it, and then you hooked it
Yeah.
ball
Yeah.
and you jump.
Yeah.
It was kind of
Yeah.
like that, only there wasn't a ball on top. It was like it's like a balancing board.
Oh, yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah.
So then
Absolutely.
I started having them do that midfoot and then drop down into not quite a 90, but
Yeah.
getting down there and then holding that for a minute
Yeah.
in the center position to see if I could mimic a vibration board and
Yeah.
so we're just starting to tinker with that. But
Nice.
what's it costing you? It's costing you 2 minutes, and you're getting the foot ankle work that you want, and you're getting a little bit of balance. So even if it doesn't translate like I want, we're not wasting a ton of time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's so weird how often I've had like a what the hell effect on as far as training. So a funny story, it's not even funny, it's cool. But one of the stories I have about the K box is when we first got it, we had a girl, she's a basketball player and she's probably like 5'6", maybe, nothing crazy. But she was doing squats on the K box and it worked well. But then Chris Corfus put an exercise with it where you would kind of put your leg through a strap and do like a knee lift to hit the psoas. And so we did that for 4 weeks. And then we usually test like a full running approach every 4 weeks. We did it for 4 weeks and she was touching, I think, like 8.8 before that. And she tests her running vertical and touched like 9.2. And I was like, where the hell did 6 inches come from? Like, we didn't do anything that different except for those two things. And to this day, I'm like, I mean, I could try to explain that, but that's still like, that's a significant gain in 4 weeks. So when that happened, I was like, oh shoot, that's like another like, I still have more to learn type thing because I couldn't explain that.
That's what's crazy. When we brought ours in, you've seen guys with really poor verticals, and then you'd have them jump almost like dumbbell jumps, jump, then go to the K box, then come back and jump, and you'd watch their vertical in a night climb 2.5 inches off whatever that potentiation they got out of that K box.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started with the K box, I was doing it a little too heavy, most likely. But I think I had read somewhere where it's really, if you look at the wheel spinning, the person who can stop that wheel the fastest and get out of it are the athletic people. So we dropped down the inertia a ton. And that, to your same point, when we'd have that in and that thing is just going up and down super quick, that's what really translated for our athletes.
And it seems to me in a weird way that would carry over to a banded box squat really well, because that's essentially what you're doing in the box squat. You're getting stopped in the eccentric and you're overcoming the bands very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see that.
Now, we've kind of went over a few different things, so let me get my notes back in order.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were all over the place.
Hey, dude, I told you I ramble. I'd bring up so many different things. I'm like, I don't even think I'm answering the question at this point. I'm just speaking off the top of my head right now.
No, I'm enjoying it, and you've answered everything that I've thrown at you. So I'll keep going until I find one you can answer, I guess.
Sure, absolutely, sure. Or we just keep talking about whatever,
Whatever. I know you're a movie guy, so we could definitely talk movies.
Absolutely.
I got on Prime the other day when I was getting ready for a podcast and looked through it, and they'd added a bunch of 90s movies on there. So I've been like stuck. They added added Mallrats and Dazed and Confused and all these great movies.
Yeah, dude, I love it. I rewatched with my girlfriend. We watched, I don't know if you've heard of this movie. You probably have. It's called The Sixth Man. It's with Marlon Wayans and Kadeem Hardison, I want to say is the guy's name. And it's a 90s movie. It's about, I'm from Seattle and it's a basketball team that played for UW. And after watching it, the graphics weren't great, but the story was good for me. And it kind of made me super nostalgic about the 90s.
Like sitting around and watching White Men Can't Jump?
Yeah. I can't tell you how often I've watched that movie. I love that movie. I didn't like the second one. I don't know if you saw the remake. It wasn't that great, but it's they're trying to build off nostalgia. So it's like, I'll check it out.
It's pretty dang hard to build off that first one and make it anywhere close to being as good.
That's exactly right. I mean, a couple of the coaches, we probably every week we reference something from that movie.
I've got a bunch of kids out there, so they don't get any of the jokes,
Yeah.
I was trying to tell them the other day that I thought we should paint a mural of Sam and Dean on the wall because we create monsters.
Yeah.
They didn't get it. They
They
didn't
didn't get
they didn't know nothing about
it.
Supernatural.
Yeah,
It was a
exactly.
waste of a good
I'm
joke,
like, come on now. Come on. You got to know about the Winchesters.
But back to training.
I don't even know if this part will make the podcast, but this is awesome.
I, I, I think it's fun to get on some other topics every once in a while and
Absolutely.
just kind of ramble on. But
Yeah.
you were talking about different things you've hit on, different things you've tried. We grind out to the same things over and over and over with the same ideas. When do you step back and reevaluate, or what do you do to get you out of that grind and look at it from a different perspective?
Yeah. So I think a lot of that has to do with like what you're doing and listening to podcasts. Like when I talk to other coaches and see how they like the sequence stuff, that's what helps me. I mean, I try to listen to as many conjugate coaches as I can because that's my wheelhouse. But I listen to people who are not in that, in that space and maybe even say don't like conjugate just to see what they have to say. Now, I may not agree with it, but it's something that's useful. So, I mentioned the PMAV seminar. We had Rolf, we had Tony Villani, then we had John Evans, and being able to see how they do different things is really important for me. So if I've talked to Rolf a ton, but if you listen to John's stuff, and he's really good about putting out information, but it really comes down to like for him, get really strong and jump a lot. So the way he sequences it is not how I would because that's not what our clientele, they don't have the schedule for that. But this is giving a little bit away, but he likes block periodization. And so that works really well for him and his high jumpers. Now, would I do stuff like that? No, it doesn't really work for the way we train. But no, getting to know more coaches out there is a huge thing. Like I talked with, and man, I messed up because I forgot his name, but I heard him on your podcast and hit him up on Instagram, and he talked about his training, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll be honest, we just do linear training," and I'm like, "Linear? That don't work." And he's like, "It works for us, and it works really well." And I'm like, "All right, I should probably revisit that because." There's a bunch of different ways to get strong and a bunch of different ways to get fast, but there's basics that you see all the really good programs have. It's same philosophies, just different ways of getting there. So I'm rambling at this point, but it comes down to being able to talk with other coaches, see what they do, and then you try it for 3 weeks, right? Like I was reading an article that said all of training is a 3 to 4 week experiment. And if it does what you think it was supposed to do, then it's good. If it doesn't do what you thought it was supposed to do, then take it out or put it somewhere else. But no, I mean, it'd be easy if there was just one program that worked for everyone, but there's just too much individuality amongst people. So it's a lot to try to get through, but talking with as many people as you can has been huge. I mean, for me, for a little bit, my powerlifting coach was Travis Mash. So him and I would not really talk about my training. We would just talk about training principles in general. And so getting some insight into what he thinks, has helped our program get better. Having calls like this, podcasts like this, and, social media, as much as people kind of dog on it, I'm like, it gets us to be able to talk to a whole bunch of different people, and it ends up being good.
You talk about Travis Mash in there. I was stumbling through some stuff when I was thinking about making a few changes to our program. I really didn't have the answers I wanted. But for whatever reason, I think I was actually getting ready for Johnny Parker's interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was watching that on YouTube. And then when I finished that, I left and I just left the TV playing. And the irony of it all is I come back later and it was a Travis Mash Sornex presentation.
Yeah.
And he just went line for line and answered like all the questions that I was kind of developing, and just this ironic twist of fate that I just happened to have that podcast on. So yeah, that was an introduction to his stuff and kind of how he got to decide what he wanted to do. And it helped us tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's a very smart coach. And just having him as like just someone who mentored me for a while definitely helped me get better. And again, it goes back to all of us are on the shoulders of giants. Like I said, we're not making anything up. We're just putting it together in a way that works for us. And that's the thing I love about this industry. We're actually all willing to make each other better. It's not like cutthroat. the really good coaches really like talking training, which is something I love.
That's what's so fun about this. And I try to have all sorts of people on, whether, like you said, I agree or disagree. It doesn't matter. Maybe you Olympic lift, maybe we don't. Maybe you do something we don't. But let's hear what you do and then let the people judge what they want to put in. Maybe it works great for their population.
Yeah.
Maybe it works good for mine if I try it. It's just a matter of getting people talking and thinking. Sometimes it takes a lot of thinking before you decide you want to do that. But then that aha moment comes up. What if you tried this?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I mean, just as someone who has questioned himself pretty much on the daily, like the kind of running joke around here is for my own training, I'll switch up what I do in the middle of a set just because something will pop into my head about like, oh, what about this? And it's no, you gotta try stuff out. And if it there's a lot of times where it'll work and there's sometimes it won't work. And and even one of the things Tony said is he loved everything Rolf said, but it doesn't fit. Like it doesn't exactly fit in his system. And both of them are very successful. So it's the whole Bruce Lee thing, right? Absorb what's useful, get rid of what's useless. So you gotta know how to filter that out.
You'd mentioned Bird earlier, and Bird's helped me so much. I can message him, be like, "Hey, I got a kid that's doing this," or we got a little tweak right here. What can we do? And he's always been great about getting back with me and helping keep my kids going forward. And saying that, me and him had talked about jumpers and deficiencies, and you can locate the deficiency of the jump and start working on it in the squat rack or wherever that may be. Is that something you've noticed? Like you watch a kid jump, and you're like, "Oh, okay, he needs to be stronger here. We can do that in the rack."
Yeah, kind of. Because we just the logistics of it makes it tough. So we try to do catch-all stuff. So if you look at our program, it's very like low volume and it's like there's a lot of one set of stuff. So kind of just to catch all, one of the things we'll do is we'll max effort, to a box, and then we'll hit a double at a high box, double at a low box in an attempt to just hit what that person needs as well as what they're good at. What I will say, and I think I heard Bird say this on another podcast, but he was talking about how he had a girl who had a better vertical seated box jump versus just a regular vertical jump. And I've seen some of that too. That's more of an indicator to me of their ability to not use stretch running cycle well. And I kind of ran with that for a few years, and it kind of turns out to be true. Like if you're good from a box, your ability to reverse your mass isn't that great. But if you're able to, reverse your mass quickly, like all dynamic movement is, then that's a better indicator of your elasticity plus explosiveness. I was talking with another conjugate coach who trains one of his athletes out of here, and I haven't fully fleshed this out, but I was looking to create like what I was calling like an ELA score versus an EXA score. So ELA being elastic athleticism and EXA being explosive athleticism. So do you have this ability to, go down and up well? And do you have this ability to be stationary and just explode out without that elasticity? And having that, as a score for the athlete to show what they need to work on. And that idea has been around for, decades, but it just gives like the client and the parent a little bit more insight into what they need. So it gives it so they know what they need to work on essentially.
I haven't kept up with it like I should on our athlete tracker, but we were kind of down that road ourselves. I called it a Barry Ross metric. So what we were doing was
Oh yeah.
we were taking the coefficient of the squat with the power index of the vertical jump. And then we were taking the coefficient of the deadlift with the power index of the deadlift. And then we were looking at those numbers to see kind of where they should be. And if a kid was deficient, then where was he deficient? Was he deficient in the jumps or was he deficient in the strength? And then we could build that up. And as I got to doing it, I started seeing some of the kids were negative, they were a negative number. And I'm trying to explain to them like, look, this is why you're not seeing the field. You jump good. You move good. You're pretty quick. You're just weak.
Yeah.
Some kids don't want to hear that, and other kids want to attack that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean that speaks to the whole mindset thing, right? Like when the kids who are destined for D1, here, you can tell from their mindset that they're different. Like a lot of, I had a conversation with one of our athletes about, they talked big, but they said they love the game. So it's the baseball in this case. And I was like, I don't think you do. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you love playing the game, but that's the fun part. Are you willing to put in time to work out more, get in more practice, sleep well, stop staying up till 3 a.m. because you can? So no, it's definitely a big mindset thing that I've seen as far as when you let people know what they need to work on.
And they all want to think they're dogs. But,
Yeah.
I was fortunate. One of the first kids through the door, he just won a Division II national title wrestler this year.
Okay.
And so I got to work around him and I got to see what the mindset was. And when he walked in the room was going to meet him. He was never coming down to the room. I've heard him chew on kids,
Yeah.
you don't pay rent here. Get your butt up and start loading plates,
Yeah.
and the room would always meet him. Well, that's how come he's a Division II national champion.
That's exactly right. I love that.
And so you see a few kids like that, and then it's easy to point out, okay, that kid's going to make it. And then you see the other kids that tell you how much they love it, and they're inconsistent. They won't help the other kids. They never push the weight very hard. And you're like, okay, you may struggle when the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, like your talent can get you so far, but like it's really your mindset, your character, like all that other stuff that keeps you on that road because it is a grind, honestly. It's not easy trying to be a high level athlete. So, you got to be able to do everything to work hard and recover hard. And that way you stay as healthy as you can and be able to be as athletic as you can.
And he was one of those. He went and lived life. He'd go and play golf. He'd go and do all the things he wanted to do, but he'd be in here at some point during that day. It may be close to midnight, but he'd be in here getting after it because that's what you got to do to make it to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like my favorite basketball player is Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. But Mamba mentality is not the healthiest thing. It's like there's parts you can take from it, but I mean, you need your sleep. You need to, you need time to rest and do stuff to unwind. I mean, not everyone is built for just being on all the time. And whether that's a genetic thing or like a learned mentality, I'm not sure. But I would say more often than not, the kids who know how to work but still unwind, they tend to stay healthier and recover just because they're not always on, right? So like I did RPR seminars. I took them and they talk about sympathetic versus parasympathetic. And it's like you can't just be in this fight or flight all the time. And if you are, it's gonna be tough on your body. So no, you definitely need to make time to have fun. The problem is that people think that if I only need to have fun, it's like, nah, you gotta do the hard stuff too. You gotta have like a blue collar mentality.
That was the biggest crash course, and that's probably where I was going to head next is the psychology of it all. But that was the biggest crash course I got. He'd taken third in state twice, and his senior year was coming, and he was looking to win it. Well, as we got closer, the nerves, he couldn't shut it off. It was like a bad dream. It was just haunting him. And learning that aspect and how to be there for him, that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know in your bio we touched on psychology a little bit. How have you found ways to help athletes cope with some of that?
Yeah, so the RPR stuff is good because anytime you're breathing and being able to bring your heart rate down is good. The psychology of God, who is the guy? There's a really famous speaker. I think it was like Les Brown or something that said a quote. He was like, don't rely on your confidence in yourself. Use my confidence for you. Like, I know you can do this. And you have to be genuine about it and really make sure they know. Like I mentioned, I'm an introvert naturally. And so I had to learn this idea of, 90% of what you say aren't the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's your body language, it's your tonality, it's your ability to get them to feel what you feel. So that's a big part of it. I mean, just being able to make sure they're on your side and they trust you with what you're saying because anyone can say words, but are you hitting them on the level that hits them emotionally? That's the biggest thing I had to learn. I was very much like I'm a math and science guy. I was using logic to tell them stuff, and that's not what gets people to trust you. You need to hit them on an emotional level to where they can feel that confidence you're giving them. They can feel that you are giving your best for them. You're not just a coach trying to be like a drill sergeant. So
Hmm.
no, that's huge. That's by far the biggest thing I had to learn in my career because let's say this was like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Let's say when I was in high school, I'd be like, and I was trying to talk, I'd say, you need to go lower. You need to run faster. It's, you're looking, oh, good job. That doesn't get any energy out of them. They're just like, what the hell? This freaking robot is talking to me. And so the understanding of, there's these certain things that we have as humans that speak to us faster than what our prefrontal cortex can process. And talking to those things is really huge. The more I got into psychology, I was like, wow, this is just as, if not more important than the science that I know. I think I heard somewhere where some gyms call the personality the 51%. It's because all the science is great. And I've seen it here. There are coaches that have come through an intern that have been absolute geniuses, but they just couldn't get the buy-in from the kids. And I'm like, oh man, you either got to learn how to do it or you're not gonna be here very long because people want to be with people who they have a good time with. If they just see you as like some hard ass, and this is specific to the private sector. I won't say it's like this if you play for a school or whatever, but they can leave if they want. So getting people on your side is a huge part of being a coach.
Yes, when they want to be here, then you create a culture that other kids want to be here. And
Yeah,
if that kid believes you can help him, then I believe you can help him, and then you just have to prove that you can.
yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing. I've mentioned this on a few podcasts I've been on, but one of the biggest mindset shifts I had was in this sales course. It said people don't want to pay for what they need, but they'll pay a lot for what they want. And I was like, oh man, that's true. Cause I don't want to have to pay a ton for gas. I don't want to have to pay a ton for my health insurance. But I just spent $600 on this new exercise science course. And I was like, cool, I'll do that right away. So when you make people, I used to say, you need to XYZ if you really want to play on the next level. Just changing it to, oh yeah, you want to XYZ, and then they'll take it's like, oh yeah, you're right, I do want to do it. Or like when a kid is like, why do I need to get stronger? I don't jump with a barbell, on the court. And I'm like, well, you want to jump higher though, right? It's like, yeah. Well, you're gonna want to do those squats because that's obviously gonna help, right? And then they're like, yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right. So that the whole want thing is huge.
Some kids walking in know what they want, and then others you got to teach what they want.
You gotta teach what they want. That's exactly right. Because I mean, we all want cookies and ice cream, but we also want to be healthy. So you got to eat proper as well. And I'll be honest, the people who know me, they know I eat like crap. Like I am very much I eat fudge Keebler cookies at night and I drink a Coke in the morning. So I'm not the ideal person for like how you should eat, but it's, it's, I do want to be healthy. And so like the exercise stuff obviously helps and, just kind of framing stuff the way certain people have framed certain things in my life. It's like, oh, I see what you did. That was a cool psychological trick. It's not even a trick. It's just, I was taught there's a difference between, I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but there's a difference between persuasion and manipulation. You know, persuasion is I'm convincing you to do something for your own good. Manipulation is I am convincing you to do something for my own good. So there's a lot of persuasion stuff that happens in the gym because it's going to help them, and it's a huge skill set to have.
I've had you on here a while. I know you finished up with some kids today, so I'll kind of wrap up with this question. But
Sure.
the importance of proving to people that you are making them better and they don't feel manipulated by how you're trying to get them to perform. How are you able to do that?
Yeah, that's tracking in technology. That's by far the biggest thing. So one of the things I talk about a ton is that I don't like coaches and trainers who rely on charisma. Now, charisma is good. Don't get me wrong. You need it. If you're going to be a really good trainer, because that does get that buy-in. But they're also convincing them to do stuff that doesn't help the kids out. So I've mentioned before, like, and this happens multiple times, which probably means I need to get more charismatic. But we've had kids get incredible results here, go somewhere else for a year, come back and be worse. And it's because one of the things is they're not tracking anything. They're just making them work out. It's like kind of they're doing stuff that looks like what we do. They'll sprint, they'll jump, they'll lift, they'll throw. We're not tracking anything. But for us, we're tracking every sprint you do. We're tracking every treadmill. We're tracking every jump. We're tracking if you're getting stronger. We're tracking a bunch of stuff to prove that we are getting results. And that's probably the biggest thing that I feel like people need to do if they're serious about being in this industry. Because again, you can charisma your way into a lot of stuff, but you'll be found as a fraud really quick because they won't be getting better or they'll get hurt. And your ability to track stuff and understand what intensities you need, what volumes you need, is really important because then you can see if your volumes made them worse. And more often than not, I see that just because, as a coach in the private sector, I have to account for what we do, but I also have to account for what they do in practice. And I also have to account for those jumps or those throws or those sprints, as well as any extra practices they have, as well as honestly, is it finals week or is it AP week and stuff like that. And like having the ability to have a program that can withstand through all of those stresses and they still get better is one of the signs of a good coach. And that comes from tracking your stuff. I mean, and I know not everyone's like made of money, but go get something to at least track their jump or track their sprint or something like that. Don't just be the coach who's getting them tired. One of Joe DeFranco was a guy I read a lot when I first started, and he was like, "Hey, I can make you do 1,000 jumping jacks and get you tired. Like that, tired is easy. Any idiot." And I don't know if I can cuss on this, so cut it out if I can't. But Dan John said one time, any asshole can make someone tired. But are you getting good results? Because again, tired is easy. It's just, do you have the confidence in your program to have lower volumes and still get better, which is something that I think we do well. And you can tell by the results. And, obviously there's no perfect program, so we can always get better and we're always trying to get better. But I mean, just keeping it so where your kids are at as far as their progression is unbelievably important.
I got to work with Peter Campbell a little bit with horses, and he was very much down that road before I'd ever even heard anything about this. He's like, anybody can get a horse tired.
That's right.
Anybody can get a horse huffing and puffing, but what does that horse know? What does the first 15, 20 minutes look like when it's the best that horse has to offer? Are you just riding them into the ground and wasting that? It's kind of the same with athletes. When they're at their best, what do you have to offer them? Is it just tired? Because there's not much at the end of that.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And that's the thing. Again, going back to PMAV and Rolf will say, if you could do a workout over the course of the year, which is I think he said 2,000 hours or something, or whatever he said. Maybe it's like 200, but essentially he said, if it takes you 200 hours to do something versus 100 hours, as a coach, you'll pick 100 hours every time, because then we're not eating into recovery. We're still getting better. And we're taking a long-term look. Like I look at some of the coaches in our area who are competitors of ours, and everyone posts the cool stuff on Instagram, and I'm like, that is not something they should be doing. And it's hard to get people to understand that because all the cool looking stuff is what sells, and capitalist society. So free exchange of monetary value for goods and services, but one of the big things like I really wish I was doing better at was just education for the athlete and the parents. And the hard part is there's this thing they want, this thing that I know that they need, which I should probably frame as something they want. And then you have to meet in the middle somewhere. And sometimes that's just not there because the parent is just so dead set, or the sports coach is just so dead set on we need to do this. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I wonder if us as, performance enhancement specialists or strength and conditioning coaches, whatever you want to call yourself, do we need to be the ones who actually try to become sport coaches and help the kids actually stay healthier? I don't know if that's feasible in an actual, from a logistical standpoint, because all the good strength and conditioning coaches study so much that it's hard to ride two saddles, right? You only got one ass. So, but I do wonder sometimes if that's a direction we need to think about, just to make sure kids stay healthy. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. The better you get a kid, the more playing time they get, which means more time that they might get injured because they're having more volume as they go. And then that's the reason why injuries are going up for kids. I mean, there's a girl who just started with us who, she's in 7th grade and had already torn her ACL before coming to us. I'm like, I didn't even know 7th graders could tear their ACL, but apparently they can. And I think as young as 10 years old, I've heard ACL tears. And I'm like, that's just stuff that didn't used to happen. But again, I'm rambling again. So if you ever want to shut me up, just let me know.
No, you're talking about things that I've thought about a lot. And the podcast has helped me understand some stuff I never understood. You were talking about Chris Corfist earlier. When he was on, he talked about kind of the pregame ritual before football games. It's like, that's the best you're going to get out of your athlete, kind of like the horses. That's your best part of the athlete, and you just used it up in your 70-minute warm-up.
Yeah.
Running fly sprints. I don't know that I totally understand all of that now. At one time, that was just what you did. That's just how I thought. It's like every coach I had been around, that's what you did. You got 70 minutes pregame. We're going to use them all. It's going to be like a practice. And well, now you're walking out on the field and your guys are just exhausted.
Yeah, no, it's true. I often think about, like you brought up movies. You remember Good Will Hunting, right?
Yeah.
I do feel like most people who aren't serious about this industry are like the guy in the bar. Remember that whole how do you like them apples, that whole scene? And he's telling them like, oh, I really think the economy of blah blah blah. And then Will comes up and it's like, yeah, you think blah 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 blah.
But next year you're going to think this.
Yep, yeah, exactly. And everyone has to start with what I call being a parrot. You can sound smart by just regurgitating what your mentors have taught you, but you have to get to a point where you're really thinking about it deeply. And that takes time. That's the hard part people don't realize. It took me a long time to really understand what Louis was putting out there. It's taking me a long time to really understand TPV and the whole, even like the EADIS with the whole, your ability to rebound out of stuff, how Rolf and Randy would explain it. And it's not something that you can just listen to once and then fully understand it. Like a lot of coaches here, they'll be like, man, you're a smart dude. You remember all these podcasts and all this. And I'm like, maybe I'm a little smart, but it's really, I re-listen to a lot of stuff a ton of times. Like my fun is listening to exercise science stuff. So that's the part where it's like, then you really get to think deeply about things, and having this, just because you can, turn a key and press the gas pedal doesn't mean you know how to build a car. Like there's a bunch of stuff that goes into that. But a lot of, especially the younger trainers, they'll say like, oh yeah, I made this program where blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, one, you didn't make that program, that you just tweaked this little thing, which is cool. You're learning, but just know who you're learning from and give them credit for that, because there's a lot of stuff that really great people have put out there. And for me, at least, it's important that they get their due, because it's one, it gives us a chance to learn more. And two, we get paid to train people. Like that's awesome. I don't have to be in front, in a cubicle for 8 hours. Like, we're in the Seattle Bellevue area. We get a lot of Microsoft people. A lot of them come here because it's just a place to unwind. And I'm like, dang, I don't have that stress of I'm in front of a computer coding for 8 hours. So it is important for me that people, give credit where credit's due, understand that we're in a really good situation with what we do, and just understand deeply kind of concepts versus just stopping at the I can understand. And again, I'm rambling again, but I'm bringing something else up. So we have a cut all this out if you want, but we have a guy who is a PhD in mathematics, and we were just talking just math in general because that's stuff I like. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, was it really hard to do math stuff?" He was like, "It wasn't hard for him." But he was like, "One of the weird things I had to get over is that we all know 1 + 1 = 2, but understanding that it took 300 plus pages to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. Now, when I hear that, I'm like, what the hell? I got one apple. I got another apple. That's two apples. So I understand it on that level. But understanding all the stuff that comes before it to get to that point is where all coaches need to go. Same thing with TPV. Same thing with Westside Barbell. Same thing with Fred Hatfield stuff, Chris Corfus stuff. Anyone who's come, during our time, before our time, it's really important to put that time in to see how they ended up there and not just, have the answer.
You get into a whole deal that it takes a lifetime to learn a lifetime, and you don't learn what you need to know in the beginning until dang near the end.
Yep. That's so true. That's so true. I hate it because it's like, I wasn't a great athlete, but I was pretty good. And it goes back to like, dang, if I had this when I was younger, what I could have done. But I guarantee everyone, felt that same thing. And it shows how we progress as an industry and just as humans in general. I mean, we're getting into the age of AI. And we're going to be like, oh, if I had AI when I, in 2015 versus 2025, what I could have done. But I mean, just stuff keeps evolving, and it's important to try to stay with it because there's a lot coming at us, and being able to keep up with it and put in time is really important.
Well, Coach, I appreciate all the time you give me tonight. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful. I should have did this sooner, but I'm glad it probably actually worked out just about right because I'm starting to have the questions about TPV and all
Yeah,
those things. So, man, I appreciate you delving into that.
of course, man. Anytime. I'm happy to talk with anyone about it. I mean, like I said, all good coaches love talking training, and I can't talk about training enough. So if you ever want to talk again and anyone else does, feel free to let me know.
All right, man. Well, I'll make sure your socials are on the show notes and people can get a hold of you that way.
Okay, sounds good, man. I appreciate the time.
All right, man. Have a great evening.
You too.